Yo, we're live streaming. All right.
We should be live streaming. It should work. But we might have technical difficulties, so we'll see.
All right. Well, all right. So then I guess the meeting of the External Relations Committee is now adjourned. And
Turn us.
let's adjourn.
Yeah.
I know, I feel so formal. I mean, it's not adjourned. Oh my God, that's at the end. I have not had my coffee. All right, so today's conversation is really talking about, I think as a committee, really celebrating the work that we have done, but I think most importantly, really taking that time and space to look at what possibilities can look like around the way that we, strike a better balance between sharing data points as well as the stories that really are grounded in the impact that, this organization has had, throughout many communities in Wisconsin. So today we have a very special guest, Andre Zangsonera, who is the Deputy Director and Chief of Staff at the Indiana Arts Board. So we're going to be really learning a lot from him and just really listening to, what Indiana has been cooking up, the work that he's leading, and maybe that can really inspire some of the work that, we're hoping to achieve this coming year as we get better at telling our story. So before we get started, I know that this is the first time, Andre, that you're meeting a few of us. So I just wanted to make sure that, if everyone can just, say your name, maybe how long you've been on the arts board, and then what community you represent. And let me go into gallery view so that we can see who is here. We'll start with Dinora Marquez.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Andre. It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm Dinora Marquez. I am in Milwaukee, and I've been on the Arts Board now for a full term and was just reappointed. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, happy to be in the external committee. We saw the work you did over there. You're doing in Indiana. I was in Puerto Rico as well, so it was really exciting to see your work. We're happy to have you with us today.
Thank you.
All right, Brian.
Hi, Andre. My name is Brian Kelsey. In my day job, I'm the managing director of Peninsula Players Theater in Door County, which is America's oldest professional resident summer theater. I am the chair of the Arts Board, and I have served on the board for 12 years. And yes, when we were all frothing at the mouth when we saw your data metrics, and that's where Chella and I were right next to each other going. So very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Karen Ann.
Forgive my clumsiness with the buttons. Anyways, Andre, it's really nice to meet you. I've been doing funny emailing back and forth with the Idlejourg all morning long.
Nice.
So yeah. So maybe my name's Karen Ann Hoffman. I live in the center of the state of Wisconsin, and I'm coming down to the Idlejourg the 26th, 27th, like that. So maybe we can cross paths then. That would be very nice.
We'll love that for taking your coffee on the canal because it's lovely this time of the year.
Sounds good. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I appreciate
it. Thank you.
You bet.
And then staff, obviously, you've been in communication with Vivian, and then Karen as well. So feel free to, if there's anything you want to share quickly about maybe the excitement of what it is to have Andre with us today.
It is so exciting to have Andre with us today. Seriously, I'm really glad to have you here. Vivian, thank you for getting this moving.
I'll second Karen. It's very exciting to have you here.
Excellent. So everyone who received the agenda, and hopefully you were able to take some time to really look through it. What we did is we linked all of the reports that are now very beautifully organized on our webpage. And that includes, the one-pagers that are pointing towards Senate, Assembly, as well as the general statewide data points for the one-pagers. So I just wanted to also take some time to celebrate. So Andre, just to contextualize it, the last time we put some of this information out was in 2017. So now we have data points from 2024 And again, like this is just really helping us find like a cadence that really works for collecting that information. I think the important part is also that, we just celebrated 50 years of the Arts Board in Wisconsin. So that really opened up the doors for us to do statewide kind of listening sessions throughout the community. And I think a very big component was like, okay, well, we're listening to all these like stories of impact. But then when we put the one pagers, it's kind of like, I don't know, like this like disconnect of really like, yes, like the numbers tell something and the economic value of things, but really, and I think that this is something that, you even brought up in questions during your session in Puerto Rico of really, how do you communicate beyond, that those data points, economic value of things. And I think that's probably where we as a committee are really interested in having that conversation. Andre, were you able to kind of take a look at our documents?
I don't believe I got a copy of that, so I apologize if I missed that email, but I'm happy to start from the get-go.
All right, let me just see if I can drop it in the chat.
While you do that, Chella, I'll just say, while you've been talking about connecting with the legislature, obviously we also connect with the governor, and I had an update to share with you, and that is that, like Indiana's and everybody else's, the state Humanities Council is in deep trouble right now. And so we were proactive in connecting with our governor's office, letting him know that that was the case and what we are standing by, ready to help with, if needed, and also what's going on with the Institute for Museum and Library Services. So they have indicated that they really want updates on how the changing landscape might affect us. So they're being very receptive, and I just wanted to clarify that and update Chella and Brian and Karen and Dinora about that as well.
Wow, that's really good to hear that there's conversations around that happening. And yeah, like they're losing 85% of their budget. So it's just so disheartening, disabling in many ways of the work that they do.
And I didn't mean to disrupt or derail the conversation. I just thought, governor also is part of this mix, and we got a good one. So,
but it's also important to have that conversation since Doge is in the NEA or was there last week and the end of the week before. So we're waiting to find out what happens to the NEA now.
I can. Do you want a quick report on the latest on that one? Sorry, Andre.
No.
Latest,
this is
because I was at
a
NASA meeting, the end of last week. So if it's new from,
so this is quieter information since one of my best friends works in the arts education program.
Hey, Karen, you're being broadcast on YouTube too. So
yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that reminder. And so Doge, I don't know if Doge has left or not. But I do know that and my sense is it's the NEA leadership, maybe with Doge, I'm not sure, determining which programs may need to go and which programs will stay, and there are a number of, I think, like all of the federal agencies, they're being offered an opportunity to resign later, retire now, or stay on. Those are the options. And I'm not clear on how all that plays out, but yeah, we're still not sure exactly what's coming down, and NASA's doing a great job in keeping us posted.
Absolutely. And I think that, Brian, Karen, as you were mentioning, like, well, does this really fit into the conversation we're having? So obviously we're in the thick of our biannual like budget listening session, which is why, these one-pagers, these stories, these face-to-face meetings that we're all actively trying to prioritize, I think speak to the importance of the work that can be, done in this committee as tools to really empower folks to have the most recent data points, stories to share, with their folks that have decision-making power and that impact and hold, purse strings. So it's very timely, Karen. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. So I know we want to maximize the time with Andre. So we kind of just had the idea of, okay, well, Brian, myself, and Dinora saw your session. of really how, and these are, I guess, our guiding questions to you as, we have this conversation. I don't know if there's something that you, like, obviously there's data or a portal that you've already shared in actively are using in Indiana. But for us, it's really more of like, how can the Wisconsin Arts Board integrate dynamic ways to share data? The big question is like, what do we do to get started, right? And this conversation is really helping us just look at the universe of possibilities, like how to prioritize, what data points beyond economic impact need to be, folded into the conversation. How can we increase accountability and transparency for the communities that we serve? And then what is believable and trusted data that we have or that exists? And again, all of these is inspired by the session that we attended with you. So yeah, so that's kind of the questions. And my hope is that this can be a conversation. So, committee members, please chime in and, let's really take advantage of, Andre, his knowledge and what the Indiana board has been doing around data.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to introduce myself. And again, first of all, thank you, Chella, Karen, and Vivian for the invitation. I'm Andre Sanxonera. I'm the Deputy Director Deputy Director, Chief of Staff for the Indiana Arts Commission. I've been with the commission now for 3 years this summer. Previous to this, I worked at the city of Indianapolis as a project manager for 6 years in the mayor's office. And that's what I got started with, sort of understanding and getting my feet started with dashboards. Because at the time, I was working in a criminal justice complex project with the city of Indianapolis. We were tracking $500 million of expenditures that needed to go into a project, right? And we wanted to make a way of understanding where is every single penny for this project, for communities campus project is going through this. And it's the biggest transformational project for the city of Indianapolis after the airport project. So it's putting that accountability for 25 counselors, for our different stakeholders, our legislatures too, at the state house level to understand where this funding is going. So based on that genesis, that was the beginning of where I got started working with it. Something that I had zero experience coding, zero experience understanding any of that. And it was just putting information in Excel sheet, right? Putting information from an invoice, which is at the time when we track for information, and keeping that information consistent and clean for us to put that information and visualize it of where the money's going, whether that is what part of the construction project that is, whether it is the operation, whether it is the graphic design, or engineering design, or the construction materials, to all the granular level of what the XBE, which is minority business women and minority report, to having that understanding of where each of the investment of that project was going to be utilized. So again, we updated that information on a monthly basis when we do our draw reports for the bonds for that project, and then we're able to share that information out with community members and stakeholders on that project. So fast forward now to the Indiana Arts Commission. I started, again, as I mentioned, over a little bit 3 years.
Did Andre freeze for you?
And I just assumed it was mine.
So did I. I wonder if we could send him a note in the chat if that would get through, although frozen is frozen.
I'll send him a quick email and see.
Oh, he's coming back. There you go.
So sorry, my internet disconnected.
It's nice to know that happens in the city and not just rural.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but you're all hearing loud and clear now.
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, my camera started freezing. I'm like, maybe it's just me. Let me just keep going with the presentation. Okay, where was I? Was I saying was part of the information and the data that we got at the time when I joined at the state 3 years ago, we needed to have that information to know where our grants are being utilized right now. Where are we doing the investment in the communities? So that was part of my first projects that I started bringing that knowledge from the city into what we're doing with the state and utilizing and understanding what the different data we got. So part of my first question that I asked your board was, what grant system are you utilizing and how are you utilizing that reporting? Because the data, you have it already. We have this information that we're reporting already to NASA and the National Endowment for the Arts. So you have some metrics, whether that is, you know, the name of the organization, the county of the organization, what type of organization it is, and the amount of the organization. So you utilize all that data already, and you're also hoping that you're also capturing what your district levels and your Senate levels districts are as well. So we're utilizing all the different data along with the congressional district to put all that information into a string of conscious, basically, of understanding that the data is relevant and consistent. So that was my first question. When it comes to that, and we're working at the time with Eric Ashby, who is our director of programs now. At the time, he was a grants and research manager. And part of the big process that we started working is we have 4 different program managers that are asking the same questions 5 different ways. Right. So when we're doing grants, when we're utilizing as a staff, making sure that we have the same standardized questions to ensure that the data that we're receiving on our end is all standardized, right? Again, we can ask different questions 5 different ways, but we need the information and making sure, right, that we're not asking questions for the sake of asking questions. I feel like some of the times we conflate that with importance of asking and putting the extra gravitas and work on the grantee. But if we don't need that information, it is not utilizing any sense to us in terms of the data and the quality that we're utilizing for that. How can we X that question and making sure that we're getting more consistent and cleaner data? So part of the process was working with that and then standardizing and utilizing that same information, working with the team, and also educating their program managers to select. Now, we utilize Found, and I know you guys utilize Smart Simple, utilizing a set of predetermined questions that you can click and drop into your application, and also working with the grants and research manager to understand that the questions make sense when they're building their application, or they're building a midterm report or the final report. Because again, all that data information, you're going to be utilizing that at the end, and you want to ensure that there's consistency, but also data hygiene when it comes into the information you're collecting. So part of that process, and again, what I bring to this in terms of the system that we utilize Power BI. That is something that, again, it's a click and drag. If you are good in utilizing Excel, that's something that you should be able to utilize in terms with Power BI, because it utilizes that. I'm going to share my screen here to show you. So here's a quick look for those who attended the conference in San Juan. Quick overview of what our dashboard is. Updated to the latest information, which I just put a couple of grant programs that we have right now at the moment. And I'm able to look overall what our contributions have been through each fiscal year, all the way to the different county level. So I'm able to go different fiscal years. I'm able to go through different programs, let's say our arts operating support, and I'm able to see all the distribution that we have made through 2017 till now. Additionally, if we're talking about talking to our legislators or talking to our constituents, that's another opportunity that I can do here by clicking all the different areas. And I'm going to click here because I live in District 47. I'm able to see all the distribution that we have done in Senate District 47. So again, it's a good opportunity to bring a tablet with you and have a conversation with a legislature and have them the opportunity to just go and see what is happening in their district. They also have the opportunity to go and see through their specific district. So I'm going to click here, 47. And try to see, again, comparison, all the different organizations that they have in their respective region as well. So that's another opportunity of how it goes as well. So part of that, again, it looks very intimidating, but on the back end of everything, it's not. As I mentioned, it all feeds out to a Excel sheet, and I'm trying to be careful because we are sharing this online, but again, there's no sensitive information here. So here's an example of our most current grantees who are serving youth. I have our IAC region, the name of the organization, the amount, organization type, institution type, Also primary discipline and project discipline. So all these 4 columns that you're seeing right here, this is information that you already provide both to the NEA and the national number and NASA. So this is not data that you're not getting from anywhere. These are data that when your grantees are putting in their final grant reports, those number codes are already provided to you by the NEA. So you have that data information up there. I'm also able to provide the congressional district along with our House Senate district, city, state, zip code, and county. And that's it. On a different spreadsheet, I have a different table that does validating the data. So I'm able to pull out, again, based on that information on what is their county district or their Senate or House district, automatically pulls out for me the name of the congressperson, their senator, or the state representative. So it feeds into that information, and then that feeds into this data that provides over here. On the inside of the house wheel, again, that same data that you guys saw here in this spreadsheet, it's what's feeding this information over here. So I'm able to click and drag the information that goes in, and it's all put in those values as they come in, fiscal year and amount. That's it. And it pulls out that information for me. Mapping is a little bit more complicated. So we're working a little bit more that way, Mapbox, to get that information out there. But it's something that, again, it's also useful for you all to better visualize what information you want to share with your constituency. Any questions so far? Okay. So again, most of that is, again, getting that information from your final grant reports and getting that information into the system. The things that we're working right now, as we have it right now, we're working on trying to get this a paginated report. So paginated report is an option that Power BI has as an option that allows you to create personalized PDF copies of the report. Because again, this is a live website. If you try to print it, it's not going to print the information the way you want it to, or it doesn't allow you to export into a list. So we're trying to figure that out. The other hiccup that we have as a state agency right now here in Indiana is that our state budget agency wants us to implement a different grant system called eCivis. So for us, that brings a little bit of a hiccup because we've been working with Founding for so many different years right now. And that's going to be a little bit of a change of understanding how that system works and how that system catalogs the data information. Because that information, that grant management system is meant for managing awards and not meant to issue awards. So I have a little bit of issues with that right now in terms of how we're able to get that information out there and how we may be able to make it more accessible for our grantees. Because as you're all well familiar, we have organizations all the way from multi-million organizations all the way to volunteer-run organizations that have 1 or 2 volunteer staff. Not equitable when it comes to putting applications and grant systems into the portal. So trying to have that opportunity more relevant. So we're waiting for a waiver right now. And if we get that waiver from the state budget agency, then our next step is transition outside of Power BI. So we have Power BI as a system, but the state of Indiana is also transitioning to Tableau, which is another solution from Salesforce. So my recommendation to your board right now is to check what what application suites are available through your state issue IT department. Whether that is if you have access to Salesforce, working with your system, or identifying if there's agencies like ours. We have the Mastermind and Performance Hub, which is a state agency that manages all the data collection. So in a future plan right now that we have right now is utilizing an API key. So an API is a database gateway basically that allows our information from grant management system Founding to speak directly to that database at the MPH or Measurement and Performance Hub database system. That allows information to live on that state agency, and then that gets pulled into the Tableau server and provide that information updated at the time at Tableau. So right now, manually, I have to go in every time we issue a grant issuance, and we issue that first grant payment and the contract executed. I pull a report from Founding that has those tables that you guys saw here, that has this information, all these different columns, and then I'm able to just post it over there. And you see right now I have 5,342 lines of grants right now at the moment, right? But that is manual labor, right? And it takes time, especially at the beginning of the fiscal year when we issued about anywhere from 300 to 600 grants a year. through a grants program. So putting that information in on a yearly basis it's fun, but it's also room for errors if something happens and something gets destroyed. So understanding what are best ways to keep the data, and understanding that the data is able then to feed directly into the database system without manual errors. Because Lord knows, I've accidentally, when you're copy and pasting information or fixing data, I accidentally copy, and for a brief time, most of my organizations were cinema, right, instead of arts organizations. So those are small things that you have to be mindful when you're managing the data, and especially if it's one person managing all of this, or if it's multiple persons, because it's a double-edged sword, having the single individual versus everybody else at the same time managing the data. It can cause some mayhem here and there. So part of that process goes there. But that's what we're looking here as a state agency right now, and moving forward and transitioning to something that it's a little bit more automatic, that goes from our grant management system into that database, into the Tableau dashboard. So that's it in a nutshell, just basically what the information is. Again, I'm happy to answer more questions or provide a little bit more background or overview of how we do that process, or how do we end up choosing, the metrics that we utilize here, or the little knobs that we choose over here as well, or just giving you a link, which I'm going to do here on the chat, so you all can see it also on your computer and play with it at your own convenience. So any questions?
No, I think you went over exactly what we had seen. I mean, that was a very great synopsis of the bigger session that you had. But I know that when we were at the table, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chela or Dinora, was that the system we do have the system that would feed into something like this from a data standpoint. And for me, looking at something like this and where I can put it to use so quickly, and why I was so excited about it, is I recently met with Representative Todd Novak and handed him his one pagers. And well, I showed them to him, and he's like, "Oh my God, can I have these?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." He's like, "This is really important for me to know." And I said, 100%. And so I gave them to him. But I would like to get to at least the year 2018 in our technology capabilities at the Wisconsin Arts Board, meaning we've got this data. How can we show the data better? How can we make it so that end users have the ability to see how, to compare, in a sense, how are other areas of the state doing, but also so our state representatives, that we can direct them straight to a place. They've got the ability to run a PDF of key data, so that they have that, so that even if they don't do it, I would have loved to have had my laptop in that room and said, "Hey, Representative Novak, let me show you some things here. Let me show you the area around you. Let me show you how American Players Theater feeds this area. And if they weren't there, what does that mean?" So I am a huge proponent of us moving, whether it's this or it's something that behaves like this. I am a huge proponent of us getting behind being able to share our information faster and more often.
And that's the beauty of this, right? I don't have to wait until our biennial report for us to share this information out there. It gets updated at least on a monthly basis once that grants are being issued and people are able to utilize information. So our executive director, Maya Michelson, have been utilizing this a lot, right? Because it's an opportunity that as she travels the state, as she meets with mayors, as she meets with elected officials, she's able to show this is the impact that the Indian Arts Commission is having in your local community.
Yeah.
So,
and especially as we have 72 counties, and as we're trying to spread our arms around all 72, we know there's communities that there are counties that have not received grants. And so as part of the 50th, the staff identified organizations within those counties that we could make special grants to. The board has re-upped it for a second year as we try to expand that out. But I think it may help if people can see it more transparently within a click by their county, click, They can see
Mhm.
what's happening around them, and it can create more dynamic conversations around that topic as to what are they doing over there, and it might build synergy amongst organizations cross county lines as to how are you guys doing this, or what's the difference. I mean, I know with us between Door County and Kewaunee County, it has to do with how mature our arts product is here versus theirs. But I think it's a great way, and if they can see the grants and everything and it's so transparent, it gives people natural connectors with whom they can reach out to have conversations. And I see Karen's got her hand raised, so I'll be quiet now.
I do,
All
thanks.
right.
You were talking about the sort of getting that laptop and going out in real time and saying click here. And I'm wondering how many grant programs you have that are you talking about like current year? Because right now we've got people who are, they may not have gotten any money this year because we are just if we're talking calendar year, right? So I'm assuming that the information you're sharing with them is pretty much based on the last fiscal year, or are you saying it's what it is right now, you've got nothing, but that's because the panel hasn't met, or how does that work exactly, Andre?
So for us, is the moment the grant is issued through a contract, that's when we upload this information into our system. So basically it
So
goes on a updated basis and sharing that information. Luckily, we were, 3 years ago, we were in the same place as you were. We are saying, hey, we want arts for everybody and everywhere. We have 92 counties. And we can see the 12 and 18 counties that have not received funding from that. So the good thing about this tool is for us to be able to see on a macro level, here's everything that's missing and what are we doing at the time. So one of the strategies that we have as an agency was we hire a position. We created a communities position because, again, a lot of these 18 counties that we didn't have were mostly rural counties throughout the state, right? So how can we have this individual, when they step into this role, to visit and establish those connections with individuals in these counties and get them into the PIPE program?
understood.
establish-
Yep. I think my question, and sorry, I may not have had enough coffee either. My question is, you're out in a community and they want to see something in real time, but there's no contract that's been uploaded. So what do you show them? Do you show them last year's information?
Yeah, we have last year's information. We go all the way to 2017. Yes.
So wherever the last time is that you made a grant within that or had a fiscal impact is what you show them. And then you
Correct.
talk about, and then you provide the oral context for why there hasn't been anything since then. All right.
Correct.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions? Dinora, Karen Ann, anything that's like struck or you were like wowed?
I'm not really sure. My question, I think, is more for our staff. How close do you feel like we are to being able to populate something like this to make it useful for us? Because I mean, it looks fabulous, and we were already pretty wowed when we saw it in October. And it seems like there's a lot of work that needs to get done on the side of the staff, and I'm wondering if we're staffed enough to do this.
Yeah. Andre, would you mind sharing the screen again of all the info? Because I don't know that you have anything on there that we don't already collect.
Yeah.
Right. I think Dale wasn't intimidated by this
Right,
from that session. Dale was not
Yeah.
intimidated.
I mean, we don't right now, I'm not sure, and this would be a Vivian question, whether we can do that beautiful map that shows here is where you are, here you are.
Well, that is the software. Yeah, I mean, that's the software
Yeah.
that's doing this.
Right.
And that takes a little bit more of coding, and I'm happy to share how that goes on the process. But basically, again, that information that we asking is, what's the organization name, the amount, the NEA questions you got. I mean, you all have this data.
Right, exactly. So the good news is, Janora, in some ways not, but in other ways, if it's coding and software that we don't have yet, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. And Vivian, if you have any insight, please feel free to share. And if you don't, that's fine. Yeah.
So I think on that end, it's definitely feasible. I don't think intimidating for Dale. It's also not intimidating for me. I would say the biggest problem we have right now is we need to just update our website in general. And that's it's a bit of a slower push than I would like, because I'm trying to emphasize to our Department of Technology that we don't need a third party to do this. Given that I do have a background in web design, it would be a really quick turnaround if they allow us to. So that's the biggest technical difficulty that we're facing. We need to update our website so that we can actually show this. Because
Oh,
given the capabilities right now, I don't think that our website is going to be able to integrate this view at all.
got it. So
Um,
this is living on your Indiana Arts Commission's website?
This
Okay.
is just living right now as a link because we
Yeah.
do have the possibility of putting
Yeah.
it as a HTML code into the website, but it just doesn't look that well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Okay, that
So
makes sense.
for
I
us,
wouldn't
yeah,
expect that this would live on the website, Vivian. I think we would just link to something, which should work.
yeah, I think for in terms of accessibility, I would rather have it fully integrated into the website, and that's again a matter of um making sure that the HTML code can actually integrate in that. But and then the other question that I had is it looks like things are organized by counties, and there was some redistricting that happened not too long ago in Wisconsin. So I don't know if you have faced a similar predicament in Indiana, and if so, how did you kind of remedy that? Do you just go off of whatever the current, districting is, or does it kind of change based on the fiscal year?
yes, so that you're talking about a lot of hours that we spend with the team in doing that. So that's something that happened at the beginning, obviously, with the census data and all the districts and everything reintegrated and the new congressional, House, Senate districts. I had to go in each organization profile and update that information. So work hand in hand with Found. Then they provide us a list of all our different organizations that were built in the system. And both myself, Eric Ashby, and the interns that we have that summer, we went one by one and updated each of those organizations based on the legislature's information that they have available. It's easier that way. We learn now, right? And we're starting a relationship now with our Geospatial Information Systems Agency, sorry, GIS system. Each state should have one. Indiana has one here too. And they have an information that allows you that once you put the address, that automatically plops that information to you. You already have the address of these organizations in your grant system. So instead of doing the mistake that we did, not knowing we know now, of doing those manually, but again, great building exercise for us as an agency of understanding. You have that possibility of working with your state agency that provides that GIS information. And part of that also is getting the files that you need when you're trying to do geospatial data. So from them, I'm able to get right what's a county code that they have for each of the datas over here, the latitudes, the shape files. Shapes is a little information that reads out for the map that you want for that to show up in a map, right? You're able to get all that information. And then once, and I do this manually at the beginning of session, I also update at the beginning of the calendar year, I also update who are the new representatives or who senators or legislatures, so that information is also up to date. But again, working with that GIS agency, they do all of that work already. So take that responsibility out of the board if you want to collaborate with them and do that.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Perfect. And we do have one more committee member that joined. So John has joined.
Hi, John.
John, if you just want to do a quick introduction of yourself, where in Wisconsin are you and how long you've been on the board?
Sure. Boy, how long have I been on a board? I'm in my second term, and I am in Madison, Wisconsin, and I have been involved in local different arts boards as well as arts education in the state.
Great.
Thank you. So you walked in, or I guess
I got the gist of what's going on. Yes.
you got the gist. All right. So we're really looking at like the back end of the tool that does all the data visualization. So, just questions in terms of what are the systems, like how can those systems talk to, whatever Wisconsin has in place to make sure that that data is talking to each other and it's pumping out like pretty things, not scary things.
Yeah, and I will say again, work with your IT department and have that conversation with them first. So you have step one is understanding what data you're feeding in. That's great. You got that. You got Smart Simple. You're working with your data team and your grant manager and understanding that the data is, a better uniform and standard. That's the first step that you want to do. The second step before you embark on this lovely dashboard process is, again, talking to your IT department and understanding what tools they have available. Are they a Microsoft's team? Are they able to provide Salesforce team and you're able to use Tableau? Are they a whole different system, right? That they bring another contractor like EY or Deloitte, right, to produce those different things. Obviously, you don't want that. You don't want it on that side because it's a little bit more costly. So you want to sit more with those in-house tools like Power BI or Tableau that provides that opportunity and the management for staff to understand, because you don't need coding to understand that material. So as long as you're proficient with Excel, as long as you're good to able to put that information, you're able to build the infrastructure, and then all your team has to do, if they're not able to feed it directly to an API, is to put that information on that same rows and columns at the end of the year or at the beginning of the or the contract period, so that information stays relevant there in your system.
Perfect. John, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. So are you looking, or are we looking, I guess I'm looking at Chella or Brian or Vivian, are we looking for simply a database of Wisconsin counties and who represents them, both in our legislature and in Congress, therefore we can translate that into a map?
No, the purpose was looking at the counties, and then when it comes down to the Senate district, if we're pulling this like our one pagers or the congressional district, that's where Vivian's question came in with redistricting. But this is laid out more of what happened in each county, and then you have to find the way to tie the county to the congressional district for if you're sitting exactly. Thank you very much, Andre. So it just shows you how many cuts you can take of this. So if you're meeting with, if I'm meeting with Joel Kitchens and I'm just going to show him his congressional district, but I also want to show him just Door County and then just Kewaunee County, the two different counties he represents, I can show him that, or I can pull it by his congressional district as a one piece and saying, here is your impact.
Mm-hmm.
John,
But
and I linked to what Andre is screen sharing. So if you want to look at the chat, that way you can play around.
Yeah, I see that. The reason I bring it up is I have a staff person in my agency who's amazing at mapping, and we've done all kinds of maps by congressional district, by school district, not by county. So I just emailed her if she has. Here, I'm going to put a link in the chat. We have this interactive map. And I can take this offline with whoever wants to go offline, but I'm just, I'm thinking that, that's why I asked the question about, is there a chat? Let's see, yes, there is. That's why I asked the question about, do you need a spreadsheet, or what is your need?
The more map makers, the better, that's for sure. That's cool. Sorry.
Right,
Andre.
but the need of this is more because this is something that the data talks to that we currently have, and it's what Indiana uses. So it really is grant specific as to what we're looking, how we want to communicate. And this would replace our one pagers, this whole concept of the one pagers. And so there is a solution that exists already, and we've got data in the format that the solution would need. So it's just a matter of how would we, what does it take for us to get here? Do we have the people power? And which I believe we do. Obviously there's always the upfront pain. But once you go through it, then it's less painful, I would say. But it just gives us a solution that already exists versus trying to create maps based on the data we have. I'd rather have it plug into a solution.
Okay.
A pre-existing solution.
John, if you have a particular, GIS experience, though, and I don't know that we do, other than the percent for art thing that we did a number of years ago, that would be particularly interesting to learn a little bit more about.
I have no skills in GISing. I have daughters who do, but my daughters.
Well, the person you had on staff that you mentioned,
who did our maps, who I'm actually chatting right now on the side to see if she can talk to Vivian or whoever you want. Who would you like her to talk to?
Yeah, and their map, this map that you're showing me right now through ArcGIS is great too. So again, they're different solutions. The dashboard side, when it comes to it, is because you also want to implement how much of the funding level comes in and dissect it to a little bit more of the basically slicers. That's the good opportunity that we have with Power BI or Tableau versus just utilizing our GIS alone.
Yeah,
'Cause it's a great solution. Yeah.
connecting her with Vivian would be great. And Vivian, maybe you can then rope in me and Dale at some point. But thank you, John. Thank you, Andre.
All right, any other questions, impressions?
This is Karen Ann. I'm just saying that I can see where, down the road at some point, this could be a fabulous tool that could be audience dependent. So yeah, if you're talking to your legislator, you bring up those legislative filters. If I'm talking to my mayor, I bring up his city filters, because I know where I live, even my city is divided into two separate state Senate districts. And so things get really confused if you're just looking at county lines. It'd be great to have all these filters for multiple audiences, but down the road, totally, I get that.
Yeah.
Andre, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about, that central question that I think really grabbed, my attention about like the data points beyond economic impact, and kind of like how is Indiana, Commission kind of wrestling with that, and hopefully, I don't know, like how is that looking for y'all?
It's a start point for us right now because we are now part of the new vertical. So in the new administration with the new governor here in Indiana, there's 8 different verticals versus before that, the Indian Arts Commission, along our 165 arts agencies and boards, right, used to report directly to the governor. Now we have 8 boards, 8 verticals, and we report now to the Secretary of Commerce. So we're exploring and understanding what does that mean for us as a state agency and what those metrics and information is going to come. So I don't have that answer for you right now. I'm hoping to have that for you, hopefully by the end of the next fiscal year, as we again start to work better with our Secretary of Commerce and understanding what information we want to have and what are those metrics and KPIs that they want us to be looking into it.
No, thank you for that, because I know that that's something where we're in very like similar, I think, place now, knowing that. But this is really, I think for us as a committee, you mentioned, first of all, knowing the data that we're working with. So, John, to your question, like this is already data that we're collecting through the grant reporting from like our grantees, information that then we have to reshare with like the NEA or NASA. So the spreadsheets live, they're there, they're populated, right? And to that point, it's like, how do we take that spreadsheet and identify which platform that we can have access to that will bring these spreadsheets, into a more like dynamic life. So that's kind of like where we're at right now. And I think that's a good suggestion, Andre, of looking at, okay, well, what's some in-house, what are some contracted options that we can have? Is there anything else you would add to our what is this, our initial steps as we point towards this direction?
I will say also, I don't know which agency this is within your version of state government right now, right? But also understanding what type of information and how you can share information publicly in public data sets. So again, that's structure that we get here from the Measurement and Performance Hub here at the state. So again, like I mentioned at the beginning, that's a state agency that their whole sole purpose is to manage data on behalf of the state and display that information. So they also run our transparency portals and how much we're getting for XYZ grants or contracts or our contracts database. So understanding what that information is and where your statewide information you're also sharing that's not publicly available. So again, I think the information that I share is at the bare minimum, but there might be some regulations and laws about whether the address that you're sharing or the information, email or phone number for those organizations might be an issue, especially if they're individual artists, right? Because we assume, right, we have the organizational information and that's publicly available, but you will have grantees that are, individual artists too. How do you do and how you discern that information? So you see, that's why I don't have any publicly available information outside of the address, but still from an artist, I do have their address that they provided that can be their home address. So making sure how you share that information outside of those things, outside of the county, outside of the city, outside of the zip code that doesn't quite identify where that individual lives or it's placed at.
Oh. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's just double-edged sword sometimes that happens, right? You think you're sharing information and you can be putting information at risk of somebody. So thinking about what those ways, and again, if the data is useful or not, and what's the purpose of that. So
John,
yes,
what
we
would
want to
the
make,
Wisconsin group, what would the Wisconsin agency in charge of those numbers? Do you know what that would be? Because I honestly don't at this point. Probably easy to find, but embedded somewhere within DOA, do you think?
In charge of
Andre,
funding.
no, determining what numbers we can, collecting numbers and numbers that we can share. How did you put that, Andre? Sorry.
yes, so they are, and I'm going to share here, this is the agency that's in charge of the management of data information and sharing on behalf of the state of Indiana. So seeing what's a parallel in the state of Wisconsin.
So
So
the
they're the ones that,
Indiana Measurement Performance Hub is your version of whatever we have. Gotcha.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know if there's a state, so DOA would be for you, like we have our own lawyers and our own data security people
Mhm.
who do our stuff. So full transparency, Andre, I am with the Department of Public Instruction. So we are a separate executive agency.
Gotcha.
But
So-
what I'm hearing from Andre is in Indiana, all state agencies, regardless of what department they
Yeah.
are in, have access to this state agency that does these things. So I have some homework to do. Thank you.
Yeah,
doubt
and again,
we have-
that can be the state. I know, for instance, the city of New York or the city of Indianapolis, they have their own version of what this is, Performance Management Hub. And again, this was brought in 2017 by Governor Mitch Daniels at the time, just again, in terms of modernizing and making sure that our systems are transparent and accountable, that people have access to the information that they need. So just again, doing a good search with that and seeing what that organization or that parallel organization exists within the state of Wisconsin, and starting there as opposed to building everything together and then getting a big no from them, which is again the thing that I want to avoid, because this takes time, energy, and lots of hours. So making sure that by the time you're ready to publish this, somebody in the governor's office or somebody from a different agency says, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful point, and just so everyone's aware, some preliminary research very quickly reveals that it is the DOA that manages the state's data, specifically the Demographic Services Center. So ours is a little less fleshed out. We don't have a dashboard, but I'm sure I can initiate that conversation with the DOA regarding that
Thank you,
data
Vivian.
collection.
Awesome.
And I will say DOA, the GIS, so let me see if I can remember the name of their website, but for us, Indiana map. This is the state agency that manages all our geospatial data information too. So that's another great resource that we have. And I assume, right, that every state has their own specific one because they're charter and tasked with managing geographic sensitive information and data for everything. So this portal over here provides, and as I mentioned, speaks up to providing the data information, the data points, as opposed to us having to go one by one for all of them. Which you got Geodata Wisconsin, great.
We must. Awesome. Thank you.
No, this is very helpful. All right. Any other burning questions? All right. No, I think that everyone, I think Karen, you unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
I just did what I think you were probably about to do, and that is just move from question to gratitude and say, thank you. This was really interesting and helpful. Appreciate your time and energy.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and then we will be updating you on, conversations. I know that I'm going to be probably having sidebar conversations, with Vivian, probably looping in Dale and Karen around just like the movement of this. There's a couple, initial conversations that need to be had with like DOA, looking at like who is our geospatial open data like managers in our state. Just to ensure that, as you mentioned, Andre, that as we walk down this path and invest energy into it, that it's in a way that is going to yield out, just the best results possible and not a loss of energy, because no one has that right now.
Yeah, I will say in terms of following the recipe, you got your spreadsheets already and your data from your reporting. That's step number one. Step number two, again, talk to your IT agency and figure out what solutions they have before you start working with GIS and all the data people first. Because if that's not an option that you have available, then you have to pivot. And we'll not want you all to start working and putting the foundation and then getting the big no from IT saying we don't have either, or it's Power BI, or it's not Tableau, or we don't have anything available. So making sure to talk to those and see what opportunities are available and what they should have staff on house that allows you to put that information. You just give them the data set, the spreadsheet, and they're able to convert that to you. Again, we had it in our agencies, just it didn't work out the way I wanted to at the time. So went with the route of Power BI as opposed to Tableau, but I'm going back to Tableau now. So that's the issue that I'm learning and retraining myself on that process now.
Perfect. And then Vivian, is there anything that you need at this point right now from us?
No, I think for right now, I'll follow the recommendations given and reach out to the appropriate agencies, and we'll see how we can move this conversation along. Maybe just a good thing for all of us to know is realistically, how long did this take you guys to implement, just so we can have kind of a similar timeline established for us.
It's not fair to say how long it took me because, again, just with the knowledge of what I came from the city and I built this, but between 6 and 9 months.
Okay.
And thank you for that, Vivian. So how many staff people do you think were engaged, and what kind of funding went into this process other than staff
Yeah.
time?
So staff time was the most. Funding, in terms of funding, based on the licenses that you need to pay for this. So right now the agency pays a $45 a month fee for this one with Microsoft. And that's what we've got available to make it work. But in terms of that, the timing of the opportunity, we don't get charged by the other agencies when we do this, unless it's a bigger project. But again, the scales of what we're doing does not merit to the level of funding that they're asking. So that's a good thing. And then staff, the people that I work with, right, work with the director, the deputy director of programs at that time, our grants and research manager. And I work with our program staff to, again, identify what questions are being asked and what's the data that's being filled in into the final reports for their programs.
Thank you.
Right. All right. So 9 months. So we have a timeline-ish. A baby will come out of this.
Yeah. And again, I'm available email, text, just what other hiccups or information you'll need for that.
No, we really, really appreciate you. We all left enamored. We put it out to the universe. Like, it would be awesome to start, like going on dates with Indiana to see what could come out of this. And I think this went really well, this conversation. I know if we're looking at the agenda, I think I'm just going to table the last item and just touch base with it at our next meeting, which is happening in about 2 weeks. We're going to be mostly gathered in person, just so that we can leave with the viewpoint of data and kind of let all that sink in. And now I think I can say the word adjourn, right? Now, Dale, John, because I had started with, okay, well, let's call this meeting. I'm officially adjourning the meeting instead of calling it to order. It's one of those days, Monday, whatever.